So it's 1 o'clock, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. We may still have another couple of people trickling in as we go, but I don't want to hold you up. So first, I want to welcome everyone today. Say thank you so much for joining our workshop, an introduction to CI/CD with Google Cloud Build. I would like to introduce our wonderful speaker, Shubha Rajan. Shubha is a developer programs engineer at Google, where she spends most of her days building sample applications and contributing to open source tools, which help developers securely and seamlessly connect to databases on Google Cloud. Before joining Google, she spent 3 years developing curriculum for STEM education nonprofits. Shubha is passionate about increasing access to CS education and to promoting technical literacy in underserved and underrepresented communities so that more people can start building the things they've dreamed about. So let's all give Shubha a very warm welcome. I'd also like to note that it is a workshop, but if you have questions, please feel free to post them in Whova. There is also a link I'm putting in the chat now where you can post in the comment section any questions that you may have, and then at the end we'll get to those as well. So without further ado, Shubha, I'll let you take over.
Of course. Thank you so much for a great intro. Can everybody see my screen? Awesome. All right. Welcome, everybody. My name is Shubha Rajan, and I am a developer programs engineer at Google. So, great to meet you virtually. I'm a developer programs engineer, and what that means is that my whole job is making sure that developers have both like an easy time and a fun time building applications with Google Cloud. I'm based in Seattle on the West Coast, so I am on the other side of the country to a lot of you. I work on open source tools, and these open source tools are making sure that people can connect to only people who should be connecting to databases are connecting to databases, and that all of that information in the databases are secured. So fun fact about me is that I'm a career changer. In my previous life, in my introduction, I worked as a curriculum developer for education nonprofits, promoting gender diversity in STEM. So I worked in the education space for a really long time. And another fun fact, my current hair color is purple. You'll see in my Google orientation photo that it was green back then. I really like dyeing my hair. And I mentioned in the last slide that I was a career changer. So I want to take a moment to plug the really awesome program that I went through that allowed me to easily transition my career into software engineering. So I went to a program called Aided Developers Academy, and it's a training program for women and gender diverse people who are transitioning their careers into tech. So it starts out with 6 months in a classroom where you kind of learn like best practices on how to be a software engineer. We learn about agile workflows. We learn about version control, building applications, all sorts of things. We even get to spend an entire month working on a capstone project, which is like any app we could dream of that we could possibly build. And we get a month to like try to build a prototype of it. It was really fun. After that, there is a 5-month internship where you get a stipend. And I spent my internship at Google. I was a temp there. We have other people who go to companies like Amazon, Microsoft, GoDaddy, and companies all across Seattle and the country. And yeah, you get to spend 6 months actually being a software engineer. And a lot of people towards the end up staying at the company that they interned at, or they get jobs at other tech companies. But overall, like, it's a really great experience. The next cohort applications open up March 15th, so that's next Monday. And we have 48 virtual and 48 Seattle-based seats. And all of these seats are going to get either a remote or in-person internship. So if you want more info on that, you can ask about it when we have time for questions later. We could also visit aideddevelopersacademy.org. And yeah, ask me anything about ADA. I love talking about it. It's such an amazing program. Okay, so switching gears a little bit. In this workshop, we are going to talk about a Google tool called Cloud Build. And we're going to talk about how we can use this to run tests on any apps we're building and to make our app live on the internet automatically. So first, we're going to talk about what Cloud Build is. We're going to discuss how we configure Cloud Build, like how we set up this config file for it. And then finally, we're going to set up a build trigger so that if we have code that's on GitHub, making any changes to that code will automatically lead to the tests running and then deploying a new version of that to wherever it's hosted. Cool. So before we get started, there are a few setup steps that we need to do. So first, you're going to want to redeem your Google Cloud credits. So we have a short link, which is gcpcredits.com/NSF. If you go to this website, you don't have to enter in a credit card or anything like that, and it'll automatically let you create a Google Cloud Platform project. So this is going to be our first step. And then afterwards, this tiny URL link leads you to how to create a GCP project. I can also screen share and walk you through that process. And then finally, if you don't already have one, create a GitHub account. It's really easy. All you have to do is give it a username, link an email to it, set up a password, and confirm it. And then you have a GitHub account if you don't already have one. And that way you could push code to your own account and like store code on your GitHub account. So we're going to take about, I'd say like 5 to 10 minutes just to make sure everybody gets through these steps. And I can screen share wait, how do I go back? Sorry. I can screen share how to use this link. So gcpcredits.com/NSF. That's going to be gcpcredits.com/NSF. What? That should work. Did I get the link wrong? Is that?
Shuba, I'm so sorry to interrupt. We have someone in the chat, and I actually use this for me as well. It says fail to get credit for the event NSF.
Yeah, I am troubleshooting that. It should work. Hold on 1 second. I'm going to stop screen sharing. Oh.
Thank you so much.
Of course. Right. We have a back plan if it doesn't work, so it's fine for
For everyone that's posting in the chat, I just wanted to say, please sit tight. We're just trying to work through it, and hopefully it'll be resolved soon.
Yeah.
Hello, Shubha. Hi, Stephanie.
Hey.
So I'm just
hopping
from Zoom to Zoom. I won't be here for the entire.
Oh, no. We're just troubleshooting an issue. So we had a credits link to click in credit, but it's not working. It was working yesterday, so I don't know what's up.
That's okay. You take your time. I hope the attendees will cooperate and they will understand. I mean, we all are.
Of course. So in the meantime, if you don't mind entering in credit card info, you could also sign up for a trial for the cloud platform so you belong, and I can send you that link. It won't bill you for anything unless you enable it to. So all it will do is it'll give you a number of free credits and it'll shut off services once you run out of those credits. So as long as you're comfortable with that, I promise it won't charge you any money if you don't consent to that. So it's a way easier process to use the link because it's just you don't have to deal with any of that. So in the chat, so that link is just going to be cloud.google.com/free. And if we can't get this working, then for now, those of you who don't feel comfortable putting in your credit card for that, I can get you those links. I can get you a working link later, and then I could email that out to all the participants, and then you could use that. All right. Let me actually screen share what it will look like to sign up with that. So you have a working email account for it.
But just so you know,
So it's going to be this.
I was just going to say,
yeah.
You can see your screen.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so I'm screen sharing right now. And if we click this, so I'm actually going to sign out of my Google account. Sign out of all accounts. Google.com/free. And then you'd click this Get Started for Free link. It's going to ask you to log in to your Google account, and it'll walk you through the steps. So I already have one set up for this. It's going to ask you for your password, and then you could go through those steps, and it'll pull that up. So. So I'm already signed up, so it's not going to let me walk through those sign up steps with you. But yeah. Is everyone able to go through the sign up steps on the free trial step? Let me know if you need any help, and at any point you can screen share what you have and I can walk you through the steps on the screen.
So we just type in that code, or?
So the code isn't working right now. I'm trying to about the link. I think what might have happened is that let up with the link that he sent. So I'm reaching out to him. But he might not get to us in time by the end of the workshop. So what I'm going to do is email everybody who participated a link later so that you can use the free trial link. But for now, we're cloud.google.com/free. For your credit card, that's kind of why we were using the link to avoid that step. But I promise it won't charge you anything for signing up for the trial. It's like as soon as it's like as soon as you run out of free credits, it's just going to shut off your services, and we're going to shut everything down at the end of this anyway, so it should be fine. But I totally understand if you're not comfortable giving your credit card information to Google, so I am happy to like send out a link later so that you can try this stuff on your own if you're not comfortable.
So if you guys want, you can also, if you don't feel like putting in the chat, I mean, you're welcome to just chat, or you can just put like a thumbs up emoji with your if everything is good.
I would love to see a thumbs emoji in the participants tab if you've gotten through these steps. So if you have I think I'm sharing the wrong thing now. Yeah, so if you've gotten through, so instead of doing the NSF link, we're going to use the GCP or Google cloud.google.com/free, because this one's not working for now. And then we're going to create the new Google Cloud project. And then finally, if you don't have a GitHub account already, make a GitHub account. And I can screen share what that looks like too.
Shiba, would it be possible just to put those links in the chat?
Yeah, of course.
The slides from the slides link, but I think we need to get permission, so we may just need to edit the permissions on your slides.
Yeah,
it would be faster for everyone to make sure they don't have to type it in.
Oh yeah, of course. I can share permissions for the slides with you right now.
Oh, perfect. Thanks. Then I can put them in the chat.
Yes.
That way you guys don't have to worry about trying to type it in, mistype
Yep.
it. If you're like me and sometimes you mix up the 7 and the B and you may switch the order.
All right, I'm just gonna stop sharing for 1 second so I can access my email. There's that. All right. I should have just shared the permissions with you. Let me know if you got them.
Perfect. It's working now.
Great. All right. Cool. So let me know if, so I'm going to share that slide again.
I went ahead and put the other 2 links in the chat if you guys just want to click them directly so
Yep.
you can follow along.
And then let me know if you have any trouble signing up for anything, and you can screen share and I can help you out.
Can I ask questions like this in muting? Is this gonna be okay?
No, I am totally fine with that. This is going to be super collaborative, so just unmute if you want to ask a question. I actually find it kind of hard to like follow along with like the text chat and present at the same time, so that actually helps me. Yeah.
So I have a couple of stopped instances. Is that going to be something that's going to charge me or no?
If you have stopped instances, no.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, guys. I was not signing for this one, but the one I was signing, they locked me out.
Okay.
Can I join this session?
Yeah, you're welcome to join us. We're just getting started setting up some accounts and stuff. So you can.
Can you tell me what do I need to do? And I'm very sorry because I'm late.
Yeah, of course, no worries. We kind of like ran into some technical difficulties, so we got started a little late. So Stephanie just shared a couple of links in the chat. So the first thing you're going to want to do is set up cloud.google.com/free, and you're going to set up a Google Cloud Platform free trial account. And also, if you don't already have a GitHub account, you're going to go to github.com/join and set up a GitHub account.
Okay, I'll do that.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Of course. Let's give that, as soon as you are done with those 2 steps, go to the, I don't know what it looks like for participants. So I can see when people thumbs up something in the participants tab.
So maybe one more time, we want everyone to give a thumbs
Yeah.
up once you've visited all of those links.
Mm-hmm. Once you've got everything set up. And if you have any questions, feel free to just like unmute, ask the question. If you need to, you also have screen share permissions, so you can screen share.
And I'm also checking the chat too, so I'll let you know if there's anything that comes up that you can't see.
Perfect.
I know you're busy.
I'm also checking the chat now. Yeah.
Do I need to put a credit card number?
You do, but it's not going to charge you for anything. So if you don't feel comfortable with that, the technical difficulty that we ran into earlier was that there's a link that allows you to bypass the credit card step, but it wasn't working. So I can check in with the GCP credits team on Monday once they're back in office, and then I can get a working link to send email out to everybody.
Okay, so I do need to put a credit card number, right?
Yeah, you do, but you won't get charged for anything.
Okay.
So it's a free trial, but as soon as your free trial credits are up, it's just going to shut down all your services for you.
Okay. Because I did have an account, I didn't remember, but I didn't put a credit card number.
Yeah. So if you put in a credit card number, then it's going to give you the $300 of free credits. And good. As soon as those, as soon as those are done, it'll just shut down your services for you.
Oh, okay. Well, it says, I see a button here for create account.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I guess since you're, kind of waiting, if in case you haven't already answered this.
Yeah, I could answer those questions in the meantime. So what was the first one again?
Oh, no, I haven't asked it yet.
Oh,
I was just going to ask what resonated with you about building like CI/CD pipelines and all that? What made you think this is magic?
I think it's okay. I think it's just like I just really love automation and just like making things like really, really easy. And I'm an open source maintainer at Google. So one of the things that we have to do is release our libraries. And this release process used to take my team members like 4 hours just to go through all of the steps manually. And then we started introducing Cloud Build on other tools to automate some of those steps, like to compile the binaries that we have to build and all sorts of things. And we turned a process that was like 4 hours long that everybody kind of dreaded and hated to just like clicking a button, waiting for a build, clicking another button, waiting for a build, clicking another button. So we turned it into a really easy 3-step process. And we also made it a lot less intimidating for new team members who came in to like, start contributing and stuff. And I think also just like the fact that like tools like CI/CD allow like a bunch of people to collaborate. Like in a lot of our repositories for Google Code, we have so many contributors. We're all pushing code, and CI/CD pipelines allow you to like integrate all of that together, make sure like no one person's code like breaks the entire build, and then we're all scrambling to figure out what's going on. And yeah, I think it's just like such a useful tool that makes developers' lives so much easier. And my whole job as a developer programs engineer is making developers' lives easier. So that's why I think CI/CD is magical.
Thank you for your answer. That was really helpful, Shiva.
Of course.
By the way, I was going to suggest that maybe than telling everyone to give a thumbs up if they're good, we're going to go with a different emoji if it's actually not working or you want us to wait on it.
Okay.
So
that is a great idea, because I think I'm ready to move forward, and if anybody is a little bit behind, all of the instructions are also on the GitHub repository that we're using for this, so you can just go to GitHub repository and follow the instructions there later if you fall behind.
Can I ask just one more question? Where's the link to get the free credits?
The free google.com/free, and that's going to sign you up for the free trial.
Okay. I thought maybe you gave us a code or something.
Yeah, there was a code, but it wasn't working. So I'm going to talk to the credits team on Monday and then get a working code and email that out to everybody who participated.
Okay.
I don't know why it's not working.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I don't have to do anything. The account comes with the $300 free credit, right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Cool. So I am going to, so am I sharing the slideshow now?
yes, you are.
Perfect. All right. So we're going to start by talking about what Cloud Build is. So we kind of sort of hinted at this already, but I'm going to go real in depth about what it is. So first, we got to talk about what the cloud is. So when I first started programming and I started hearing people talk about cloud, I imagined something magical, like the pretty castle in the clouds that's in that center picture. But really, it's something more like that. So the cloud is the ability to run your code on somebody else's server infrastructure. So you can push your code and some server at Google is going to be running it. And it might not, but I promise it feels just as magical when you could run really, really, really powerful applications without having to have a giant server in your house. So Cloud Build is a CI/CD platform that leverages containers. So we love vocabulary right now in that definition. So I'm going to go over what some of that means for those of you who are new to this. I was new to this very recently. So CI is continuous integration, and that is automating the process of merging multiple developers' code into change it onto a single code base without breaking anything. And honestly, like that's kind of miraculous, I think, because before we had CI/CD processes, you kind of had to like trust everybody who was pushing new code into the code base that they wouldn't push any breaking changes. And a lot of times that would end up with like a lot of really obscure bugs that get checked in because like you got to trust that everybody has tested their code, and sometimes people cut corners. So CI/CD platforms will run the test for you automatically every single time somebody checks in new code. So you find out if a build is breaking as soon as somebody pushes that new code. CD is continuous delivery, and that is automating the process of pushing those changes into staging and production environments. So that's like deploying code to your like app or your website. So like wherever you distribute something. That's also like releasing a package or releasing a library, which is something that my team at Google does a lot. And then finally, we're going to talk about containers. And containers are a packaging mechanism that provides an isolated environment for an application to run. So that last one is still, in my opinion, a little bit of a jargony explanation. So we're going to go a little bit more in depth on that in the next. So more containers. So you might have heard of VMs, which are virtual machines, and containers are not the same thing as VMs, but they're kind of similar to VMs because they, a lot of times the same things that you would use a VM for, you'd also do with a container. So a virtual machine virtualizes, so it kind of emulates the hardware of a computer as well as like whereas like a container uses like the host infrastructure, but like it uses like the kernel of the host operating system, and then it runs another operating system on top of that. So containers tend to be a lot more lightweight, and the image sizes are way smaller because you don't have to like download an entire, like you don't have to virtualize all the hardware as well. And containers, a really important thing about them is, and part of why we can keep image sizes small a lot and configuration files small, is that they build on other containers. So a lot of times you have a file, like a Docker file. Docker is a really popular container tool, and it'll pull from other base image that's in a registry somewhere. So that image lives on the cloud, and then it'll run some steps on top of that base image to build a new image. And every time you run one of those steps, it adds a different layer to your container. So like think of a giant jawbreaker where like you have like the core, which is a base image that you pull from. And every single time you run another step, you wrap another layer around that core. So I say the containers are like onions, which are like ogres. They have layers and parfaits, but all things that have layers. So how does Cloud Build use containers? So each build step in a Cloud Build CI pipeline runs in its very own container. And that's really important because it isolates the system dependencies and it isolates each build step so that only the files that you want to be carried over to the next step are carried over to the next step. So you have your source code, which is in a volume that we call workspace. So all of your files for your code are in this workspace volume. And only the things that are in workspace get copied from one step to another. So if one of the steps makes any changes to the system environment, like if it makes changes to system dependencies, none of that gets copied over to the next step. So this isolation is really useful sometimes. So build steps can run independently of each other, and we could even run build steps at the same time, which I think is one of the most powerful parts of Cloud Build, is that you can run build steps independently. So each build step builds a new container image based on a builder, which is that other base container image. So it's the concept for that last slide of we have a base image, and then we're going to build a new image from that. and it runs a command to that. So the files in Workspace, as I said before, are the only files that are passed between containers. So I like to think of it as a game of container telephone, where build step number 1 takes these files from Workspace, does some stuff to it, passes it to build step number 2, or like whichever build step follows it. And then the container files, like whatever modifications were made from the last step, carry over. Nothing else carries over, and then the next container does something with them. But how do we set the builds and commands for each build step? So now we sort of like understand conceptually how Cloud Build works, but how do we actually get it working? So the next thing I'm going to go over, and this is going to be a sort of more hands-on interactive part. So I'm going to do some screen sharing. We're going to get to fork and clone some code, and we're going to actually get to try this out. So the most important file in Cloud Build is called cloudbuild.yaml, and we're going to learn how to modify that file. So the first thing we're going to do is go over to console.com. So I'm so it's just console.cloud.google.com, and that should take you right over to this dashboard over here. So everybody could type that in. That would be great. When you're at the dashboard, and this is going to come out once you've like done those, followed those 3 links from before and set up your project, you should be able to see the new project that you set up right up here, right next to where the Google Cloud Platform logo is. You should see your project name. So you'll notice that there is a project name and a project ID. So a lot of times when we're going to be using, you want to make sure, so the project ID is always guaranteed to be unique. So you want to make sure that you're using the project ID for a lot of these apps. Because like sometimes if you set your project name to something that's already taken, it's going to assign you a project ID, and you want to make sure that you're using that. Otherwise, you can run into bugs. So our next step is to make sure we select our project if it isn't already selected. We're going to open up the Cloud Shell. That is this little blue icon over here in the corner. So once we click that, it's going to open your shell for you, and that's going to open up a kernel that we can run commands in. I'm going to give everybody a little bit to get their Cloud Shell up. And then the first command you're going to run in this Cloud Shell is gcloud auth login. And what this does is it just makes sure that your shell knows which Google Cloud account is connected to it. This is like authenticating into it. So it's going to spout the very long link. We're going to follow the link, and then the link if that to sign in. That. And then we're going to copy this, paste that, and we are all logged in. And then the next thing we want to do is make sure that gcloud is set to the correct project. So that's going to be gcloud config, and we're going to repeat these steps later just in case. This is going to be what you're going to do every time you log into the Cloud Shell. So this is going to be gcloud config set project. And that's going to be that product ID that we have right over here. Authorize that. And then it should start displaying your product name, the command prompt that you did this correctly. Is everybody able to follow along with that? Feel free to speak up if you are having trouble with anything, if anything's not working. All right. So the next thing we're going to do is fork and clone the demo repository on GitHub. So we've got two links here. The first one is a long GitHub link, and then there's a tiny URL if that makes sense. What that's going to lead you to is this repository over here. And then we're going to go, so the first thing you're going to do is click this fork button. And that's going to add a copy of this repository. It's going to make your own copy of the repository to your GitHub account. And then once you do that, you're going to click on the clone button. So that's under this code menu. You're going to click that. And in shell, you're going to type in git clone that. And that's going to pull down that code for the for our sample repository. So we're going to go into that. So we're going to change directories into cloud build demo. Yeah. And then if we click on this open enter, we can actually look at the code that we're going to be. So in the meantime, while we're waiting for the editor to open up, we also want to run some commands in the Cloud Shell. And we also want to give permissions to some services to run in Google Cloud. So the first thing we're going to do is enable those services. If all these are in the README for GitHub. So right now we're on step number 3. So you could click on these 3 links on the GitHub, and that'll take you where you need to go.
Some of our participants are noting that you're cutting in and out. Could you maybe turn off your camera and try turning it back on? I think.
Yeah.
Sometimes that kind of just resets the connection a little bit.
All right.
Okay. Try speaking again. Let me see, I think. Oh, you're muted.
How about now?
Keep going.
Now, is it working?
A little bit. Oh, somebody said
Okay.
I fell behind a little, but I wasn't sure whether to use my credit card or not. Which type of project did you select?
So you do need to use a credit card, but it will not charge you for anything as long as you're in the free tier. Okay, so then when you select your project, if you don't have a project already, you're going to need to make one. So when you're finally in the Cloud Console, there should be a drop-down menu right there that says Google Cloud Platform. And if you don't already have a project, you can click New Project right up there and make one. I could turn my camera for bandwidth.
You may want to shut off your camera. The sound is still just a little bit choppy.
Okay, I am shutting off my camera now. How's that?
That seems to be better.
Okay. Sorry, technical difficulties.
No problem. Yep, everyone else is hearing it. Okay, seems to be better.
Okay, perfect, great. And you can see my screen? Okay, so if you haven't already created a project, you would click this new project link once you've set up your free tier account. Cool. So once you've done that, you would want to so once you've done that, when you would open up this Cloud Shell. So there's this, there's a like an icon right next to the search tab to open up a shell, and that's going to open up this terminal. And in that terminal, you're going to run 2 commands. You're going to run gcloud auth login. I can post that in the chat. And then you're also going to run gcloud config set project. So that's gcloud auth login, and then follow the steps, and then gcloud config set project, and then your project ID. Cool. Okay. So we've done that. We're going to want to enable 3 different services. So in order to get to these services, you would go to this hamburger menu on the side, and you would click API and services and click library. And then you would search for the following 3 things: cloud build, cloud run, and cloud storage. Cloud storage should already be enabled by default, but we just want to confirm that it is. Links are also on GitHub, so you could click that and it'll lead you exactly where you need to go. So if this hasn't been enabled already, there's going to be an enable button instead of manage, and you're going to click that. And you're going to do the same thing for Cloud Run and for cloud storage. And you need to get to it through the console instead of following the links. You would scroll down here to APIs and services. Then you would click on library. And you could search for it. Can I hear your copy? I don't know what's up with my internet connection today. Okay. So the next thing we're going to do, our step, is going to be to run a few commands to give some permissions. So we're going to give Cloud Build permission to push to Cloud Run. So Cloud Run is a service that we have at Google that allows you to run any code that's in a container. So you just give it a container, and that container has some commands to run some code that you've written, and then Cloud Build will run it for you. You could use any language as long as that language is installed on the container, and it'll run that. So this is going to be what we're using to deploy some Python code as part of our build pipeline. So we're going to copy paste these 3 commands. I have a tiny URL link, which links to where they are in the documentation. And you could also copy these commands from that GitHub repo that we linked to earlier. So they're in step 4 over here. And we want to copy this. And we're going to paste that into the Cloud Doll. And then we're going to copy this command. We're going to paste that. And then we're going to copy the last command. Once you have run those 3 commands, the next step we're going to do is make a storage bucket. And the storage bucket is where we're going to put our HTML and JavaScript files, which we're going to use to make a static website. So the first thing you're going to do is go to storage, and that's going to be on, so if we open up this hamburger menu again, we would scroll down to wherever we would find storage. So that's going to be, so if we scroll down, we can find it. I forget where it is.
It was higher up for me. So
Yeah. So what I usually do is, like, if there's a service that I use a lot, I will click on this little pin button, and that's going to pin it so that it always shows up in the top. Yeah, it's like right over here. So if you don't want to search for something over and over again, just click on that little pin button, and it'll be one of the top things for you. So my storage is right over here. So I am going to create a storage bucket. And then I can name it whatever I want. But it has to be a globally unique name. So what I usually do is append my project ID to it, because my project ID is also unique. So if I do something like then I can choose default settings are fine. Default. And then I set this to uniform bucket access, but it really doesn't matter. Uniform just means that either you can access all of the bucket or you can't access anything, and you can't set permissions on individual files. We're going to create that. And then we're going to keep track of this bucket name because we're going to use it later. But now that we have this bucket, we want to change the permissions and give permissions to anybody to access it. So right now this bucket it says not public, but we want to change that so that we have public access to this bucket. Because if we want to host a static website on it, then we want everybody to be able to see it. So we're going to type in all users, camel case, like that. And then sometimes if you create if you create a project within another org, sometimes you have organization restrictions that won't allow you to create public buckets. So if you run into an error that says that you're not allowed to, then that's probably what it is. So you'd want to try this again and make sure you make a project that's not under another organization. So if you have like sometimes like if you have a Google account through like your school or something, it won't work. So we're going to give that all users. So we want to do storage object viewer, I think. storage object viewer. And then we're going to allow public access. And that works. So we're going to we made our storage bucket, and we granted public access to that storage bucket. So now if we go to the GitHub document, we are on the manually running a build part. So if you go back to the Cloud shell, you'll notice that, so I have my Cloud Build demo folder over here, and that's that folder that we just found. And then there's two big folders in here. There's the API folder, which has a Docker file. We talked about Docker files before, and they're used to build containers. So there's our Docker file that builds a Python image and then runs some Python code in it. We have a main.py function. So what this application does is it goes to an API, one of my favorites. And this is catasservice.com. And you could put any text on the bottom of that cat picture and it'll make you a cat meme. So I'm also using a...
Shuba?
What's up? Yeah.
Can you repeat that? Because it sounded really choppy. I couldn't understand, like the last couple of minutes of what you said.
Oh, I am so sorry.
Also,
yeah.
Just a suggestion, if you have many apps open on your computer, maybe reducing some of the apps that you have open.
Yeah, let me see if that'll help. I think it might just be my internet connection. I don't know why it's so bad. Disconnect from the Wi-Fi on my phone. Is it better now?
Yes.
Okay. So where were we? So we made a new bucket on cloud storage, and then we went to the permissions tab on that bucket and made it public to the internet by adding the all users permission to storage object viewer. So you would want to go to permissions add, select all users, and then select storage object viewer here. So that was the last couple of minutes. Okay, so now that we have done that, so now that we've done that, now we're taking a look at what are the contents of that file that we just downloaded. So in the folder that says API, we have a Docker file. We have a Python application that uses a library called Faker to generate some random text. And then we send that random text to a website called catasservice.com, which will put that text on a picture of a cat. And then we return that URL. So it's really simple. It's just going to return a picture of a cat. And then we have some tests that we're going to run, because obviously if we're going to want to put any code into production, we want to make sure it's tested. So this makes sure that both of our endpoints, so we have one endpoint that just returns the string hello world, and we have another endpoint that's going to return a picture of a cat. And that's just making sure that those two pieces of it work. In our front-end code, we have a JavaScript application, and this is going to have so it's a website called Cats on the Cloud, and it's just a photo gallery of pictures of cats. And when we first started out, it's not going to have any pictures of cats, and then we're going to add some code to pull in our cat pictures from that backend application. So this is the most important file when you're working with Cloud Build. I'm going to make this a little bigger. So this is our cloudbuild.yaml file. And in our next few slides, we're going to figure out a little bit more about how this cloudbuild.yaml file works. So the basics are that we have build steps. And each of those build steps has a name. So that is the name of the builder that we're going to use for that build step. Some arguments that we're going to pass into that, to whatever like the default command in that builder is. We have a directory that we want to run things in, and we have any environment variables that we want to set. So any parameters that we want to pass in to that command or to that environment. So we have the name is the builder, so that's our base image. We have arguments to the default entry point, and an entry point is like the code that runs by default in an image. We have the directory environment. So the way I like to think of this as that the name is the who step, so who's running this code. The args are what are you doing, so npm is running tests. And then the directory is where, so in what folder are we running these tests. So another really important part of Cloud Build configuration files are timing your steps. So we have introduced 2 more fields for our Cloud Build configuration, and that is the step ID and the wait for. So these 2 steps together determine when, or these 2 fields together determine when to run your step. So the ID is a name for your build step. So this will show up in your build logs. So if you're looking at like whether a step is running, like it'll tag that each log from a specific step with like the step ID. And wait for will specify that a build step is dependent on another step. So it'll only run if all of the steps in the wait for have completed. So wait for, so if we leave like a blank dash like this, that means that the step is going to run as soon as the build starts. If it's left blank, then the steps waits for all the steps before it to finish. So all of the steps that are above it in the file. So using these 2 fields, you can run your build steps asynchronously. So we're going to start out with step A and step B, which have that blank dash, or they have that dash character in wait for, so they're going to start running as soon as the build starts. Then step C is going to wait for step E to finish, and then step D has to wait for both steps B and C to finish. So we've got these 2 different processes running. There are these 2 different chains of steps running, and both of those need to complete before step D runs. And then finally, step E is dependent on step D. So this is an example of kind of like what the flow for a build process might look like. So let's try running our build. So first, we're going to want to make some changes to this cloud build.config file. So we want to modify this so that we can uncomment the step, and then we want to insert the step to run tests. So this is the step that we're going to use to run some tests for our Python code. And we want to make sure that we run these tests before we push that container image. So we have our Docker build step, which is building that container image. And then we want to wait for this. So we want to add a wait for, and then we want to wait for the Docker build step. And then we're going to give this step an ID. So we can call this step run tests. And then now we want this next step where we push to wait until we run those tests. So we're going to take that, and instead of waiting for Docker to build our image, we want to wait for the tests to be run before we actually push this up to container registry.
Okay, wait a second. Just to confirm, you added, I was adding the wait for Docker build, and then you had the ID run test. That's in line 34 now?
Yeah, so we have ID run test in line 34. It could actually be just anywhere in this block for this step. So, but as long as we have the ID run tests, and then we have this waiting for the Docker build, and then we take this ID for run tests, and we put it into line 42, which is tells our container image when we push it to the container registry where Cloud Run will pull it from. We want to make sure that that gets that after it's run the tests.
So I made a mistake and I started building the container before making all of these changes. Or sorry, yeah, I just ran it.
Oh, that's
what do I do?
That's totally fine. All that's gonna do is like, it's still gonna work. It's just gonna not run the tests. So this is just like to get practice with like changing one of these configuration files. So you could still like change it just to get practice with that.
So I would modify it in the YAML file and then rerun it, or do I have
Yeah,
to
and
do
then
it
rerun the
something else?
build.
Got it, thanks.
Yeah, and you could cancel your build with just a Control-C, and it'll be, and then you rerun it. So in the Cloud shell, you're going to run gcloud. Once you've made those changes, gcloud build submit, config cloudbuild.yaml, and then we're going to add in substitutions. So you notice that in this configuration file at the, where is it? So you'll notice that there's like fields like this where it looks like you're using an environment variable, or like it looks like it's pulling something in from somewhere. So those are substitution variables. We've got that, and then we've got a bucket name. And those are going to be passed in as you run your build. So my bucket name was Shubharajan Demo Bucket, and my project ID is Shubharajan Demo. So I'm going to pass those two in before I run my build. So I'm going to do that right now. So the command was gcloud build submit --config cloudbuild.yaml. Copy that from GitHub if you need to. So this is step 2 under manually run a build. So as we wait for that build to run, because it does take a little bit of time to run, we're going to go through the next steps, which is to set up a build trigger. So a build trigger is what is going to allow Cloud Build.
I'm getting an error message.
Okay. Can you?
Sorry, you broke up again. What did you say?
Oh, can you screen share, please?
Well, then I have a lot open.
Yeah.
Also, quick one. Since I navigated to Cloud Build to see the logs, how do I navigate back to see my YAML file? I feel silly, but have to ask.
Build to see the files. There is a thing that says open. So this tab that says Open Editor can go back to Open Terminal, and you can switch back and forth between seeing the files and seeing the terminal. Okay. So we have, what does it say? The project to the build is associated with an absent billing account. Okay. So I think that has to do with your cloud credits. So if you go into billing under that hamburger menu to the right, I think it should also, you could get to it from the home dashboard too. Okay. So let's see what's up there.
I did enter my credit card.
Yeah. So let's see if there is a billing account set up. It looks like there is. You've got free trial credits. Huh. So, and you're using the right project, right? So if you go to your home, so if you go to home under there.
I mean, I only have one project.
Yeah, you've only got that one. That is weird.
I just created it for this, so
I know. Is anybody else running into this?
Stop sharing.
Yeah. I could help you. How about I help you troubleshoot that after we get through these last few steps?
No problem.
All right. We're already kind of like running behind on time, so I want to make sure that I get through everything. All right. So the last bit is how to set up a build trigger, and this is going to be what allows GitHub or wherever you're pushing your code to run these checks as soon as somebody checks in new code. So the first thing we could do is install the Cloud Build GitHub app. So that is github.com/marketplace/Google Cloud Build. This link is also in that GitHub repo, so that's going to be linked right over there. So you're going to click that, make sure it's installed. You could also do these steps without it. So if you don't have, if for some reason you don't have permissions or something or are unable to install it for your repo, then that should be fine. So you want to, what's up?
I don't think you're sharing your screen anymore.
Oh, thank you. I'm so
No, you're not.
sorry.
I'm sorry. What side took over?
Okay. So this next step to install the Cloud Build GitHub app is going to be linked in the GitHub repository. It's going to be step number 1 under setting up a build trigger. So we are going to click there, make sure that you've installed the app, and then once you've installed that app, you can connect your GitHub repository. So that means that you're going to go over back to the Google Cloud Console. And then we're going to go to the Cloud Build tab. And the Cloud Build tab is going to, I'm going to minimize that for a second. So you actually have, so this is that build that we just ran. You can actually see the history of all of the builds that you've run before. So if you click on this last one, March 6th, then you can see the logs for all of those steps that we just ran. If you go over here to triggers, this is going to be where we connect to GitHub. So I'm going to click on this connect repository link. And when I click connect repository, I can select my source. So I'm going to select GitHub. And then if you are unable to install the app for whatever reason, you could also click on GitHub Legacy. But I have the app installed, so I'm going to click on that. So it's going to take a second to ask you to authenticate into GitHub. I already did that beforehand, but if you haven't, then there's just going to be a GitHub pop-up to sign into GitHub. And then you make sure that your GitHub account is right over there in the GitHub account field, and then you can find the repository. So mine is already connected. And then you would click on that and connect. So I've already connected my repository. So I'm going to go to the next step, which is creating a build trigger. So for this step, we are going to fill in a few fields here in order to set up our build trigger. And those are in the slides as well as in the GitHub repository. So we've connected the GitHub repo already. All right, so the next step is we're going to make a new trigger called merge to main. And this means anytime you merge any code into our main branch, it's going to run our build. So I'm going to name it merge to main. Description's optional, so I'm going to leave it blank for now. And this is going to be on a push to a branch. So you have all sorts of events that can trigger a build. So this would be a push to a branch. You could also have it on a pull request. So if somebody hasn't checked in code yet, but you want to text it before they check in the code, you could do it on pull request. I'm going to select the repository that I just linked, and it's going to automatically populate with whatever the default branch is, which in this case, the branch is named main. So I could also like change it to build off of any other branch, but I'm going to leave it at main because that's the one I want. Then we want to change this auto detected step to cloud build configuration file and then linked the path to our cloud build.yaml. This is fine because it's in the root directory. And then finally, under substitution variables, we're going to enter in those two variables that we used to start our build. So that's going to be project ID. And then my project ID is that. And then bucket name. And then we're going to create. Any questions on that step? I can take a look at.
Nothing in the chat at the moment.
Okay, awesome. All right. So the next part is, so first we're going to take a look at what that build that we just completed just did. So if you go to the history tab, you can see the last build that you ran. So if you ran that build and we're waiting for it to finish, it's going to be over here. And then in that build, in that last step in Cloud Run, at the very end, it's going to spit out and it's going to spit
Amy
out
just pointed out that you may have to request access if you're not in the Google domain.
Request access for
the slides you're talking about, Amy, or something else?
Oh, for the slides, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Let me share. I can share this out in just a second. Google hasn't enabled. They recently changed it so that we can't share things to anybody with a link can view anymore. They just locked down permissions on documents and stuff. So I really should switch over all of my demo things to a personal account. Yeah. All right. Okay, so we are going to, so I was going to show you for the next step, and I will share the slides with everybody in an email after this demo. So what I was saying is that at the end of this Cloud Run step, we have this URL over here. So that is going to be, we're going to keep track of that because when we make some changes to our code on GitHub, we're going to add that URL in. But another thing that I want us to check in on before we do that is in the storage bucket, we can actually see the website that we just uploaded. I need the sunshine and fast internet. I'll consider moving to Florida. All right. Let's see. So if I go to this bucket, and then if I click on index.html, I could actually see the website. So if you go to this public URL link, it's going to take you the homepage. It's very simple, but we've got a little hello world cat to prove that we've deployed it correctly. So going back to, we had a link from our build logs, and we're actually going to modify the code that we have in the GitHub repo to trigger that build. So I am going to go to the file over here and go to the file that says photos.html. Is it? No, it's not that. We're actually going to go to gallery.js file. Okay. So in this file, we want to. I love cats, so anytime I could use cat pictures in a demo, I will. So you'll see this file over here, gallery.js, where everything is commented out. So we're going to edit this file, and we're going to make changes. So I am going to, first of all, uncomment all of this because I want this function to run. So what this does is we deployed some Python code. And that Python code generates some new cat pictures to us. And what this does is it pulls in some of those cat pictures into a gallery that we're going to have on our front-end website. So first we're going to uncomment that, and then we're going to copy that Cloud Run link that we got from the logs and paste that right over there. And once we've done that, preview changes. There we go. And then I'm going to want to create a new branch and open up a pull request. So get cat pictures for gallery. And then open up a pull request. And then once I click and merge it, it should trigger a new build in Cloud Build. So I'm going to merge that. Confirm merge. And then if we go back to our Cloud Build logs in the Google Cloud Platform console, Cloud Build. And then we should see that a new build popped up. And then the source is going to be wherever your GitHub repo is. And then your trigger name will populate under trigger name. So all this. So we made some changes to the front-end source code, opened a pull request, merged that pull request, and we triggered a build. And pretty soon we're going to see our changes live on the website, and then we'll get to do a happy dance. So that is the end of the presentation on like how you set up a build trigger. So I'm going to open up the floor for questions, and also here are some of my social media links. I am very active on Twitter, not as active on LinkedIn as I should be, but I will respond to you. You can follow me on GitHub, and you could also email me at shubharajan.google.com. So any questions? And also, if you're trying this out on your own later, just following the steps in the GitHub repository, feel free to email me and I'll help you out. I'm also going to send an email out to all the participants. I think I can get your emails from Huva, and I can send out that link to be able to try Google Cloud out for free without any credit cards.
There's a bunch of questions in the Q&A actually already.
Okay.
One of them that I had, are there any tips that you have for incorporating CI/CD as painlessly as possible when your org or shop is very hesitant? Just saying, because I went through this.
Yeah, no, I think like I guess like the biggest way to get buy-in, I think, is to talk about like all of the technical debt that it could prevent by incorporating a CI/CD pipeline, and also just like finding people to take on that work with you. So like get other devs on your side, maybe get a tech lead on your side, and just say like, hey, this takes us so much time to like test everything manually and deploy everything manually. And like explain like the benefits of it to your coworkers. And when they realize that it's gonna like make development a lot more pain-free, a lot of times they'll get on board. And if enough people want it, like then you can make some changes.
Well, like in a small shop, how long can it take to do something like this? I mean, I know you're coming from Google, so it's a little bit easier.
Yeah. I think actually it's interesting because I feel like at Google, people are very resistant to like changing processes from what they've done for a really long time. Because like it's, you know, it's like such a big bureaucratic organization, and there's like this sort of mentality of we've always done it this way. So it's kind of org dependent. But I think in a smaller shop, I think the biggest concerns a lot of time are cost and time. So Cloud Build is great because there's a lot of like low cost and free tier options for it. So you could kind of just like try it out and see if it works. And then you could invest in like more expensive premium Cloud Build, or in Travis CI, or in some other CI platform where it costs more money to run it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Does that answer your question, or did I ramble?
Yes. No,
Okay.
no, thank you. That's great.
Shubha, I just want to say thank you so much. That was fantastic. I just have a couple of quick questions for you in the chat. I know we're running out of time. And then I wanted to let you know there's also some questions in the Q&A. We may not have time to get to all those, but maybe if you could agree to maybe look later and respond to users.
Of course.
Or to all of our participants. That way, at least we'll get all of your questions answered.
Yeah, no, I am happy to go through right after this presentation and give you answers. I wish I could have gotten through all of the questions. Like, I just want to answer all of them.
Well, we really appreciate it. So the first ones I'm seeing in the chat, I just want to ask quickly. Are you willing to accept invites on LinkedIn?
Yes, absolutely.
And then someone else was commenting that they have no access to the last link, which was the slides. So
I'll share that out. I think like what I need to do is copy those slides, upload them on personal account, and then I can make it shareable to the public. So I'll do that.
And someone wanted to know, did you work on AWS before or another cloud?
No, actually. So my job at Google was my first. So I used to be an application developer. I freelanced and built websites using Ruby on Rails before this. So Google Cloud is like my first job, like working with cloud technologies. And I got so excited about it. Because I used to be that person who was like afraid to deploy things on Heroku because like I was like, oh my God, what are these logs? Everything's gonna break. I don't know what's going on. Like I was so used to being an application developer where I could like, you know, like if I'm working on Python and Ruby, I could just like pop open a debugger if something's not working. And like do all of this like process and configuration stuff intimidated me. And then I started working at Google and like saw, you know, how efficient some of our processes were after adopting this technology. And I saw that this was like, you know, like an area that you could have a lot of impact. And I got really excited about it.
It's wonderful to hear. It's really exciting. And I want you to know that our participants in the chat are saying you were very patient with us and they thank you. And I want to thank you as well.
You were so patient with me. Thank you.
So I don't know that we really have time for much, but I'm going to quickly go ahead with one of the questions that are in Whova. Any resources you recommend to practice for students on a budget besides CSP services?
Yes. So first of all, like there are educational credits that you can ask your professors to ask for. So Google Cloud has an educational credit program. So if you're like an educator in a CS institution, you could get those credits for your students so they can practice. So if you have a CS professor, you can ask them to request those for your class. But if you don't want to use CSPs, so Quick Labs is a website that we have where it's, you could like get, you know, without actually signing up for a Google account, you could practice working with Google Cloud and with AWS and with other cloud providers. I also love Coursera tutorials and edX tutorials. A lot of these are published by, large tech companies as well as like universities, and it's a great way to get these resources from these big institutions that you wouldn't normally have access to for free. And then there's like certification programs that cost money, but I like the free classes. And then I think for learning about CI/CD, I think Coursera courses are really helpful. There's a lot of YouTube tutorials on Google Cloud's website. So I work on the DevRel team, and a lot of our developer advocates produce a lot of great videos on learning about these concepts. And there's a lot of great documentation. I can link those in the Whova Q&A chat forum after this. And yeah.
Well, again, thank you so much. That was so informative and really interesting. And to all of the participants, if you could please remember at the end of the session to go online and complete your session feedback. We would really appreciate it. And I hope you have a great day.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for being so patient with all the technical difficulties. I am so happy to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you, everyone.
All right. Bye.